No one saw this coming, not even Yandy herself. For years, she's been praised as one of the most composed, family-driven women in the industry, holding her household together through scandals, distance, and fame. But behind the picture-perfect smiles, her home had become a battlefield. Tension between her son and Mendeecees had been growing for months. Quiet arguments slammed doors. An unspoken resentment that finally boiled over one fateful night. It all went down in the car, a simple ride home that turned into chaos. Witnesses say Mendeecees tried to talk calmly, but Yandy's son had reached his breaking point. What started as words turned into a moment no one could take back. He reached forward and slapped Mendeecees across the face. The silence that followed was louder than any shout. Yandy froze in disbelief, tears filling her eyes. Mendeecees gripped the steering wheel, refusing to retaliate. When they got home, Yandy made the hardest decision of her life. Out of both anger and heartbreak, she told her son to pack his things and leave. Friends say she cried for hours afterward, torn between being a mother and a partner. The internet soon caught wind of what happened, and fans were split. Some said she went too far. Others said she did what any parent would to protect respect in her home. Now the question everyone's asking is, did Yandy make the right choice? Or did she just lose her family trying to save it? The night started like any other, quiet, calm, and deceptively normal. Yandy had planned a simple family dinner to ease the tension that had been growing between Mendeecees and her teenage son, Omer. For weeks, the two had been butting heads over everything: chores, curfews, tone, and attitude. What used to be playful disagreements had turned into full-blown arguments. Mendeecees, who had helped raise Omer since he was little, felt disrespected. And Omer, now almost a man, felt like Mendeecees was trying too hard to control him. At dinner, things were civil, at least on the surface. Yandy tried to keep the conversation light, talking about work, family, and the upcoming holidays. But under the table, Mendeecees' jaw was tight, and Omer sat with his arms folded, barely speaking. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was pride, ego, and years of tension packed into silence. On the ride home, the silence was suffocating. Mendeecees drove, Yandy sat in the passenger seat, and Omer was in the back scrolling through his phone, pretending not to care. Finally, Mendeecees broke the silence. "You know, I ain't trying to be your enemy, man, but you gotta stop talking to your mom like she one of your little friends," he said calmly, glancing at Omer in the rearview mirror. Omer rolled his eyes. "Man, whatever. You always got something to say. You ain't even my real dad." The words hit like a knife. Yandy turned around immediately, her tone sharp. "Omer, don't talk like that." But it was too late. The damage was done. Mendeecees stayed quiet, his hand gripping the steering wheel tighter. "I ain't never claimed to be your real father," he said slowly. "But I've been here. I've been showing up for you since day one." Omer leaned forward, his voice rising. "Yeah, because it made you look good. You think I don't see how you use us for your image? All this perfect family stuff for TV? It's fake." Yandy gasped. "Omer, enough." But before she could say more, it happened. In a sudden flash of anger, Omer leaned forward from the back seat and slapped Mendeecees across the face. The sound echoed in the car, followed by a deafening silence. Yandy's scream broke through the air. "Omer, what did you just do?" Mendeecees didn't move. His knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. His jaw clenched, his eyes locked straight ahead. For a man who had been through prison, betrayal, and humiliation, nothing cut deeper than being disrespected by someone he helped raise. He could have reacted, he could have yelled, pulled over, or worse. But he didn't. He simply said in a low, steady voice, "Get him out my car." When they got home, Yandy rushed inside, crying and shaking. Omer tried to follow her, but Mendeecees blocked the door. "Nah, you ain't walking in here like nothing happened," he said quietly, pain dripping from every word. Inside, Yandy broke down. She couldn't believe what just happened. For years, she had balanced being a mother and a wife, trying to keep both worlds from colliding. But tonight, they had crashed violently into each other. Omer stood outside. tears in his own eyes, still angry but also confused. "Ma, I didn't mean," he started, but Yandy cut him off. "You hit him, Omer? Do you understand what you just did? You put your hands on a man who's done nothing but try to love you." He shook his head. "He doesn't love me. He just pretends. You can't see it because you're too busy defending him." Yandy pointed toward the door. "Get your stuff. You can't stay here tonight." He froze. "What? You're kicking me out. I'm your son." Tears filled her eyes again, but her voice didn't waver. "And I love you more than anything in this world. But love doesn't mean letting you cross lines that destroy this family. You need to go cool off. I need to think." Omer stormed upstairs, slamming doors and throwing things into a bag. Mendeecees stayed silent in the living room, staring at the floor, lost in thought. When Omer came down, dragging his backpack, he glared at Mendeecees. "You happy now?" Mendeecees looked up slowly. "You think this make me happy? I ain't never wanted this. But one day, you gonna realize what you just threw away?" Omer didn't reply. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was unbearable. Yandy sat on the couch, face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Mendeecees finally spoke, his voice low. "You did what you had to do, Yandy. He gotta learn." She looked up at him, eyes red. "That's my baby. I can't believe I just put him out. What kind of mother does that?" He shook his head. "The kind that don't let her house fall apart. The kind that knows respect matters." But Yandy wasn't sure. The guilt clawed at her chest. She knew Omer had crossed the line, but deep down, she also knew something was breaking inside him. Something that might not heal easily by morning. The blogs already had this story. Yandy kicks out her son after fight with Mendeecees. One headline read. Another said, "Inside Yandy's family meltdown." The internet, as always, had opinions. Some said she did the right thing. Others accused her of choosing her husband over her child. Yandy turned off her phone and stared at the wall. The night before replayed in her head again and again. The slap, the tears, the silence. She whispered to herself, "God, please fix this." But deep down, she knew this wasn't something prayer alone could fix. This was a wound that might take more than love to heal. The moment the slap echoed through the car, time seemed to stop. Mendeecees froze, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief, while Yandy gasped, her eyes wide with horror. The tension was thick, suffocating. The sound of tires against the pavement filled the silence as Mendeecees slowly turned to face his son. Disbelief written all over his face. "Mijo, what did you just do?" Mendeecees said, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. But the boy, fueled by frustration, shouted back, "You're not my real father. You can't tell me what to do, father. You can't tell me what to do." Those words cut deep. Mendeecees stared at him in disbelief, feeling that his years of trying to be a father figure had just been shattered in one explosive moment. Yandy, sitting in the passenger seat, tried to calm the storm brewing between them, but her own emotions were boiling. "Stop it, both of you," she yelled, her voice cracking. "This is not how we talk to each other." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Mendeecees' pride was wounded, and the boy's anger had crossed a line. When they got home, the silence was unbearable. The air was thick with tension as Yandy's son stormed upstairs, slamming the door behind him. Mendeecees threw his keys on the table and looked at Yandy with a mixture of hurt and frustration. "I've tried, Yandy. I've done everything to love him like he's mine," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "But how do you love a kid who keeps pushing you away like this?" Yandy's eyes welled up with tears. She knew Mendeecees had a point, but hearing him say it out loud made her heart ache. "He's just angry, Mendeecees. You know how much he's been through. He's a teenager. He doesn't mean what he said," she pleaded. But Mendeecees shook his head. "Nah, Yandy, that wasn't just a kid talking. That was a young man who's holding something against me, against us. And if we don't fix it now, it's only going to get worse." That night, Yandy sat outside her son's door for hours, listening to his music blasting from the other side. She wanted to go in, to hug him, to remind him that this family had fought too hard to fall apart over anger. But she also knew she had to let him cool down. By the next morning, the house felt cold, emotionally drained. Yandy made breakfast in silence, while Mendeecees sat at the table scrolling through his phone, clearly distracted. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both look up. Her son appeared, hoodie up, backpack on, clearly ready to leave. "Where are you going?" Yandy asked, her voice stern but worried. "Out," he said flatly. Mendeecees spoke up. "You're not leaving this house until we talk about what happened last night." The teen stopped in his tracks, his jaw tightening. "You can't tell me what to do," he snapped. "I told you, you're not my dad." That was the last straw. Mendeecees stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're right. I'm not your father. But you will respect this house and you will not talk to your mother like that." The shouting match grew louder, voices overlapping until Yandy lost it. "Enough," she screamed. "Enough, both of you. I can't take this anymore." Her son looked at her, expecting her to take his side. But when she didn't, his eyes filled with disbelief. "So, that's it? You're choosing him over me," he said, his voice cracking. Yandy's tears finally spilled. "I'm choosing peace," she whispered. "I'm choosing what's right. You can't keep treating people this way. Not him, not me, not anyone." The words hit him like a wall. For a long moment, he just stood there, breathing heavily, fighting back emotions he didn't want to show. Then, in a defiant move, he grabbed his backpack tighter and said, "Fine, then I'm out." Yandy froze. "You're not going anywhere." But he pushed past her, slamming the door behind him. The sound of it echoed through the house like a bomb. Mendeecees sank into the chair, rubbing his face with both hands. "He needs help, Yandy," he said quietly. "Real help," Yandy nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know," she whispered. "But he's my baby, Mendeecees. No matter what he says or does, he's still my child." Hours passed. Yandy tried calling him, texting him, but there was no response. Panic began to set in. She called his friends, checked social media, drove around the neighborhood, nothing. Her heart pounded harder with each passing hour. Finally, late that night, she got a call from the police. They'd found him sitting alone at a park miles away, cold, angry, but safe. When Yandy arrived, she ran to him, wrapping her arms around him before he could say a word. "Don't ever scare me like that again." She sobbed. He didn't say anything, just stood there stiffly until his resistance finally broke. And he hugged her back. When they returned home, Mendeecees was waiting at the door. He didn't say much, just nodded and opened his arms. The boy hesitated, but eventually he accepted the embrace. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. That night, Yandy couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring out at the city lights, wondering how everything had spiraled so quickly. She thought about her family, about the years she spent fighting for stability, for love, for a future that wasn't clouded by pain. She whispered to herself, "God, please don't let my family fall apart." But deep down, Yandy knew that this wasn't over. Something inside her told her that the slap in that car was more than just anger. It was a cry for help, a sign that her son was battling emotions far deeper than she realized. And as the night stretched on, with the city humming outside, Yandy made a silent promise to herself. She would get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took, because in her heart, she knew one truth, no matter how broken things seemed. A mother never gives up on her child. The next morning felt heavy. The tension in Yandy's home hadn't disappeared overnight. It had just gone quiet. Mendeecees got up early, pacing through the living room while sipping his coffee, deep in thought. Yandy sat on the couch, staring at her phone, scrolling through parenting blogs and articles on how to rebuild trust with a teenager. The night before had shaken her to her core. She knew she couldn't just pretend everything was fine anymore. When her son finally came downstairs, his hoodie was up, and his expression was cold but calm. He sat across from Yandy, not saying a word. The silence stretched for a full minute before Yandy finally spoke. "Baby, we need to talk," she said softly. He shrugged. "Ain't nothing to talk about. I already said what I needed to say. Yandy sighed, trying to stay composed. What you said, Dan, what you did hurt a lot of people. It hurt Mendeecees. It hurt me. But I need to understand what's really going on with you. The boy looked away, his jaw tightening. You wouldn't understand. Then make me understand, she urged. Because all I see is my son angry all the time, pushing people away, and I don't know why. After a long pause, his voice cracked slightly as he said, You replaced my dad. Yandy's heart sank. Sweetheart, that's not true. He interrupted, his voice rising. Yes, it is. You think just because Mendeecees takes me to games and buys stuff, that means everything's okay? It's not. I never asked for him to be my dad. Mendeecees, who had been quietly listening from the kitchen doorway, stepped forward. You're right, he said. You didn't ask for me, and I know I can't replace your father. But I've been here, every day, trying to be part of your life because I care about you. Part of your life because I care about you.